Good afternoon, all. The sixth meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure is now reconvened. I welcome all in the room to this meeting and to this aspect of the inquiry which we have been conducting as our first subject area. I also want to welcome the viewing and listening public to this hearing. This meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament's Channel 11, the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView, and Radio 105.5 FM. My name is Sophia Choate. I chair this committee, and what I will do at this point is I will ask the members present to introduce themselves to you, and then I will ask you to introduce yourselves to us. So I will start with Member Dowlat, who is on my right.
Michael Dowlat, member. Welcome.
Christian Birchwood, member. Welcome.
Philip Edward Alexander, member. Welcome.
Foster Cummings, member. Welcome to all of you.
So perhaps we can start with Ms. Batiste.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. I am Candice Batiste, Acting CEO of the Port of Port of Spain, which is a strategic business unit of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Also representing here today is the CEO of TTIT, which is the Inter-Island Cargo Operation, Mr. Terrenio Tracy, and the Estate Security Superintendent, Mr. Ali. Firstly, allow me to commend the committee for this initiative to improve the efficiency of traffic management system for Ryston Road. The congestion that is experienced along that main corridor impacts so many of our stakeholders, and PAT is also open to finding solutions to be able to mitigate any traffic congestion in this corridor. As the Transport Commission noted before a similar committee back in January of this year, 80,000 vehicles use Ryston Road daily. That's almost 3,300 vehicles per hour. Peak hours is as much as 6,000 vehicles moving along a 2-mile stretch area. So let me position the Port Authority in this environment. The Port Authority supports the public accessing cargo and traveling service over 18 hours daily. But the maritime port operations run 24/7. The operation extends along much of Ryston Road from the ferry terminal to the lighthouse and TTIT at the western end of Ryston Road. It is a large active space. Cargo is handled around the clock. Vessels arrive, depart, ferries move passenger. Our operation do not allow for a single schedule. While vessels and port operations run continuously, landside activities like cargo delivery, administrative service, and the wider logistic networks operate largely within standard business hours. Ferry operations also structured around scheduled sailing. From our end, we have taken steps.
Ms. Batiste, I don't want to cut you across, but we were still going through the process of introductions.
Okay.
We haven't yet got to the stage of remarks, but I'm glad that you started off very aggressively and got us involved in the information which you have clearly prepared very well and brought for us to consider today.
Sorry, Chair.
So you have, I was just going to ask for introduction so that the viewing public and the listening public will know who are the people in the room with us today.
Okay.
So Ms. Duke, will you introduce yourself and your team, please?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members, colleagues from the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, and also from the Port Authority. I am Nicolette Duke, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation, and I will allow my team to introduce themselves, Chair.
Certainly.
Starting on my left.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I am Clive Clark, Transport Commissioner.
Good afternoon, members, Chairman.
name is Mark Cooper. I'm Chief Technical Officer for the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure.
Good afternoon, members. I am Patrice Caprietta, Acting Director of Highways, Ministry of Works and Infrastructure.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Neville Sanka. I am the Chief Traffic Warden, Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Adande Pigot, Chief Traffic Engineer, Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sereno Tracy, Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Inter-Island Transportation Company.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Anton Balfour, Deputy Director, PURE, Ministry of Works and Infrastructure.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Azim Ali. I'm the Estate Security Superintendent for the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Right. Can you all confirm for me that's everyone in the room? Yes. Excellent. The purpose of this meeting is to continue the committee's third public hearing, pursuant to its inquiry into the efficiency of the traffic management system in Trinidad and Tobago. And for those of you listening and viewing, you have heard the stakeholders present introduce themselves. The objectives of this inquiry are: 1, to examine the extent to which the traffic management system has been effective in the management, monitoring, and control of traffic. 2, to be apprised of the traffic management measures aimed at reducing traffic congestion. 3, to examine the strategies for effective and efficient incident management to ensure traffic flow or movement. And 4, to identify the challenges faced in traffic management. Now, I will ask all of us, including those of us sitting on this side, to ensure that we are not disturbed by electronic devices. I know for those of you who are ministers, you may have urgent matters to attend to, but could you indulge us while we conduct this inquiry? Also, with respect to stakeholders' representatives, please ensure that your devices are off or on silent so that we don't have the proceedings disturbed by devices going off. Thank you very much. And I will now invite questions from members on this subject matter which is before us. Is there anyone who would like to go first? Sorry, oh yes. Yes, Ms. Batiste. I forgot to go through the process of opening remarks. Yes.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just continue. From our end, we have taken steps to better manage how operations fits into that environment, including delivery appointment system, coordination with police, and ongoing efforts to spread activity for more efficiently across the day. But we also have to be realistic. Most cargo operations happen during the same hours that business operates. This is when the demand is highest, and it reflects how the wider economy functions. We are committed to being part of that solution, but that is not something any single entity can fix on its own. It requires coordination, planning, and a broader approach to managing traffic around Port of Spain. We are here today ready to contribute constructively to this discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Batiste.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Duke, could we have your brief opening remarks?
Thank you very much, Chairman. And we would like to thank the committee for inviting us back to speak on this very important matter. As I would have indicated on the last occasion, the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation is entrusted with the responsibility to develop and regulate our national transportation system, and we achieve this through the formulation of national policy, regulation of transport operations, and the design and implementation of modernized transport solutions. The ministry stands ready to answer any questions and, of course, to contribute to recommendations that would improve efficiency of the management of transport along with our colleagues and the committee. So once again, we thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner. Could we have some brief opening remarks?
Thank you very much, Chair. I must say, as Transport Commissioner, it's a pleasure to participate in this initiative. As we know, transportation, traffic, breach of the law, systems at the licensing division all contributes to the development and to the traffic situation at some point or the other within Trinidad and Tobago. I am very much mindful of the role that we play in the context of vehicles on the road, whether they are duly registered, whether they are fit for purpose. I'm concerned relevant to drivers, whether they have acquired their driver's permit in accordance with the law, in accordance with standard processes, because I strongly believe that these are elements that contributes to the congestions on the road some way or the other. So I do hope coming out from this exercise, we can find some level of relief. I am open for suggestions. I'm here to provide recommendations, if called on me, to assist with this situation we are facing in Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper, could we have your brief opening remarks?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and honorable members of this committee. On behalf of the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, we thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. We are pleased to be here to contribute to this important discussion. Traffic management and transportation are issues that resonate deeply with every citizen, as they affect all of us. As such, congestion, traffic management are not only matters of convenience, but critical components of socio-economic development, road safety, and national productivity. With respect to the road network, the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure is responsible for approximately 21% of the nation's roads, with the larger share falling under the jurisdiction of the regional corporations. The ministry's remit, however, includes the most heavily trafficked corridors, our highways and major arterial routes, such as Ryson Road, the Eastern Main Road, and the Southern Main Road, where congestion and bottlenecks are most pronounced. In this regard, the ministry remains fully committed to improving infrastructure, particularly along these high-volume corridors. We recognize that addressing traffic challenges requires a collaborative and integrated approach. Accordingly, we look forward to working closely with our partner agencies and stakeholders to advance initiatives such as mass transit systems and high-occupancy vehicle lanes aimed at delivering sustainable and long-term solutions to congestion. In closing, I wish to thank the committee once again for this invitation. We welcome the opportunity to share our perspectives and insight, and we look forward to contributing meaningfully to the recommendations arising from this meeting alongside all stakeholders present. Thank you.
Member Alexander.
Yes, Ms. Batiste, thank you for jumping on where we want to start. Through the chair, you quoted extensive traffic information on Wrightson Road in your opening remarks. Do you have any specific data on how many containers leave the port between 3 and 6 p.m. daily, as well as for the rest of the workday? Do you have any of that data?
Through the chair, thank you for that question, Member Alexander. We do have a digital system that monitors movements hour by hour, so we are able to divide the information. So right now, as it is, we are doing about 155 movements of trucks at our our Western container facility. The movement of this is divided up into 92% of that truck movement is done between 6 to about 6 p.m., because we start at 6 a.m. in the morning, and 7% is done between the latter part, which is from 7 to 11 p.m. So we are able to determine that we do about 17 trucks an hour in terms of the container movement at our Western facility.
Again, through you, Chair. But specifically between 3 and 6, is it a heightened amount, or is that average throughout the day current?
Yeah, so the average is throughout the day because it all depends on the transaction that the truck is coming to do. So what I mean is that trucks may be coming to deliver an empty. That's a very fast transaction. Another truck may come to deliver an empty and pick up an import, or they may go to the scanning facility. So it all depends on the duration of the process or the transaction that they are conducting on that day. But ideally, majority of the containers are moved between 6 to 6 p.m., 92%.
So could I ask you a question, Ms. Batiste? You gave us some interesting figures in terms of motor vehicles traversing Wrightson Road. And I don't know if you had the opportunity to follow the inquiry that has been going on, but it's clear that because this is one of the main arteries out of the city, it becomes unbearably clogged during peak hours, let us say between 2 to 6. Has the Port Authority considered staggering the exit of these vehicles onto Wrightson Road? Because you're just talking about 100 and some per day, let's say on average, and we're talking about vehicles in the thousands. Has the Port Authority given consideration to staggering the times, or at least saying that between, I don't know, 3 and 6 or 2 and 6, that vehicles will not exit onto Wrightson Road?
Okay. Thank you for that question, Madam Chair. The Port Authority's operation for cargo starts from 6 a.m. to 11. So basically, a trucker would make an appointment based on those hours to drop off or pick up a container. We do not determine when the container is collected or the container is dropped off at this time. In terms of the consideration, yes, indeed, we were following the inquiry and we did hear the comment suggestion. So in considering that, there are many implications if we were to consider closing the gate at 3 to 6 p.m. And again, as I would have reiterated, when we look at our data, we are seeing about 15 to 17 trucks every hour. So you're talking about 15 trucks from 3 to 6 p.m. multiplied by 3 in terms of the amount of trucks. So that's 45 trucks in total would be leaving or entering the gate, traversing via Wrightson Road. Now, the way how port operations operate, the port operation is an ecosystem that works in conjunction with the businesses, right? So the facilities, when they, for example, pack an export, it has to go on a ship that is waiting to be loaded out. So it would be very challenging for us to put a system in place, because then where does the cargo go? Where is the cargo delivered to? So unfortunately, there are many implications if we were to consider closing the gate between that period to stop the trucks from leaving, and also this will account to a lot of congestion on our facilities because we need the trucks to be able to move. We don't have any storage space. So if you shut down the port for 3 hours and you have 50 trucks there, where are the trucks going to be staying? So those are some of the implications that we would have considered, and also the possible cost to the business community, because a haulier is not going to pack up a truck for 3 hours and not charge some kind of cost for that for their equipment to be used within that 3 hours. So those are some of the implications we would have considered.
Thank you, and I am grateful for your observations, and we have read the written material which you've sent to this committee. I'm not entirely sure that you have answered the question which I posed, but I see that Member Alexander has a question for you.
Yes, actually. And takes all of their shipments between 12 and 4 in the morning. Who in our circumstance determines how shipments are moved, the port or the business community? Because, and I want to strongly suggest that it be the port, because the business community and the haulers, and I have spoken to them since our last meeting here, the heads of all of the major hauling associations have been in touch with me, and they like the idea, and they're willing to work that idea because it's in their best interest to not sit in 4 hours of traffic anyway. So is it possible for the port to lead from in front a conversation with everybody to say, we're willing to do a test to see what impact closing between 3 and 6 would have on rights and road traffic for everybody, all the stakeholders, including the truckers and the business community?
Through the chair, to answer your question, that would be determined by the business community, because it means that the business community would have to open their facilities to be able to receive the containers, as well as they would have to put all the necessary resources in place to receive a container, to pack a container. So definitely, I agree with you. Internationally, you would see facilities like that being operated. But one of the things that we are mindful of, we have included, in our operations, we have included a time that caters for off-peak traffic area. Hours, right? So our facilities open until 11 o'clock in the night at this time. This is something we would have started more than 10 years ago. And from now, after several meetings with the business community, those hours, from 6 to 11 largely are underutilized, and we are only doing about 7% of the cargo at that time. So even now, we have a facility in place where the truckers can come and collect their cargo after hours, but again, it is determined by the business community having the resources in place and being able to accept the cargo and deliver to the vessels at that time.
But Ms. Batiste, you made my point. You offer a facility to the business community that they could take advantage of. They could be guided by your hours. This is a situation that if this committee has to advise, and I wanted to ask, could we get a report from you for the movement of trucks out of your gates, those western gates, for the last 12 months?
Through the chair, yes, that can be submitted.
Separated by hour?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can be submitted.
In fact, as I was about to suggest that, because if it is, it seems to me, Ms. Batiste, that the Port Authority has sort of bent over backwards and said, listen, we are extending the time during which you can come to move your containers. And the people concerned don't seem to really care about the extension of time that they have, even though they would be moving their containers at a time of less traffic and so on, and still insist on not coming early in the morning or not going after hours, but using the time which involves peak traffic for the rest of the citizens using that traffic artery. Then I think it seems to me that there is a common sense way to approach it, and that is for the Port Authority to say, we are going to say you need to clear and be out by a certain time, and then we open again late hours. We have late hours by which your containers can be moved out of our facility. So I would really be interested in knowing, let's say on average, especially between the hours of 2 and 6, how many containers come out onto that road?
Through the chair, as I indicated, we can submit the data by hour, so we did not collate the data in the submission by hour because our periods, we use block periods, so 3-hour periods for our delivery. But I want to submit to the committee that one of the major challenges we have received in terms of the feedback is that standard working hours. So shipping trade requires a lot of agency involvement. Most of those transactions are done between 8 and 4, right? So it is a challenging for a customer to go to bureau standards after 4 to get documentation to be able to pick up containers at 6. So it means that they would now have to ensure that they're able to complete all their documentation by all the relevant agencies between 8 to 4. So what we have seen done regionally, when you have a system like a port community system that does digital processing of these transactions, online processing, it makes it easy for the port to work in tandem with that digital ecosystem to be able to deliver and receive cargo any hours. So we have to take into consideration that a lot of these transactions depends on state agencies, regulatory trade agencies that work between the hours of 8 to 4.
Understood. But what I'm still getting from you, Ms. Batiste, is not an answer, and the committee is concerned that there is a problem, and the reason we are having this inquiry is to see how we could resolve problems or make suggestions for the resolution of problems. And simply to say that we have looked at it and it's going to inconvenience other people, which is the long and short of what you've said, really doesn't help us. So does the port, let me ask it this way, does the port have a proposal which could mitigate what we are seeing on Wrightson Road on a daily basis, and which is impacting not only on people leaving work, but very importantly, it's impacting people like the vulnerable, children going from school or going home from school, children going to other activities, people who are unwell having received medical treatment and that kind of thing. Does the port have a proposal for how this situation can be mitigated?
Through the chair, in my earlier response, I just want to clarify, my intention was to ensure that we have a vast understanding of the ecosystems that relates with trade. So basically, you don't create a bottleneck in one area that makes the system inefficient, more expensive for the public. So for example, any charges that have to be passed on if we close down the port and they can't get the cargo delivered. But to answer your question, yes, we have considered several solutions. So number one, a port community system. Majority of the transactions that are done, while we have the trucking aspect of this, we also have the brokers, the agencies, all these people traversing from one place to another. So whether you're going to customs house or to the port or down to immigration or down to bureau standard, all these are agencies that are located within that vicinity. So it's a lot of traversing to get these transactions done. So what we are saying is we need to move to a state where we fully adopt a port community system. Because what a port community system does, it removes the need for foot traffic, and this traffic is now done digitally. So you're going to reduce all of that traversing from the different agencies, one. We also need to amalgamate a trade hub, so where you have customs, you have immigrations, you have port personnel in one area. So if somebody has to come face-to-face to come to visit an agency for specialized, of course, you don't want heavy traffic. This is just in cases where you have situation that may be challenging to solve digitally. You have all these agencies into one hub and it can be located outside of Port-au-Prince, Spain. And thirdly, we are saying that we need to be able to get real estate separated from the port, that what we call depots, where you can store containers during the day and move these containers at night. So those would be the solutions we want to put forward.
Before I invite Member Alexander, I just want to say, excellent. I mean, that really gives us an idea that the port has considered the problem, and the port has considered how to mitigate the problem. Of course, this committee, these are big projects, and I'm sure that you've advanced your proposals to the ministry responsible. But what I would invite you to do is to also suggest us, perhaps in writing, some short-term proposals. Because people listening and viewing will say, well, these are big picture items, and it will take some time for digital systems to be implemented and community hubs to be formed and so on. So if you can please have your team consider and send to us some short-term proposals which might be useful. And I will now invite Member Alexander to ask his question.
I just wanted to add that Singapore is a third the size of Trinidad. They handle 122,000 containers a day. How many do we handle a day?
On average, our capacity is 300 trucking visits we can do. At this time, which was more or less the low season, we are doing around 150 transactions.
So would you say the biggest problem for the port, based on the suggestions you made earlier that the chair highlighted, is time on motion? How are we handling the movement of cargo through the port?
I would say that the challenge that the business, well, not the business, but the trade community shipping port have is that these transactions are concentrated between the standard working hours of the countries, which is 8 to 4. That is the biggest challenge.
My last point to you is for the people looking on, because Trinidadians and Tobagonians are tired of all of us looking like we just talk in circles and we have no idea what we're doing. So you can say to this committee that given the right support, you can solve your problems where if you needed to close the gates between 3 and 6 to stop adding to the traffic on Wrightson Road, you could?
Truly, Chair, and I want to, if the member doesn't mind, use the example of Singapore. When you look into the entire ecosystem of Singapore, foot traffic is very low. And a lot of these transactions are done during late hours because they have a totally robust digital ecosystem. So what I am saying is if we have a system that accommodates these transactions to be done digitally, and the businesses are incentivized in whatever way to be able to receive this cargo, because again, they would have to have the resources and the facilities open at night to be able to receive this cargo. Yes, the port can do their part to contribute to this entire strategy as long as we are able to move the cargo without disrupting the vessel side of it, because we also have vessels waiting on incoming cargo that is not local vessels. So those vessels have a schedule. If they're coming to pick up cargo, it's 2 hours, it's 3 hours that they're willing to wait. If the cargo does not come, then the exports stay on the port and it doesn't go to market. So all these are things that we are cognizant of. And we are saying as long as this is considered entirely, we are willing and able to contribute in terms of doing our part.
Okay, so Mr. Cooper, I want to bring you into the discussion at this point, because since we are talking about Wrightson Road, it leads us to one of the issues which we have discovered impacts upon the speed at which traffic moves, essentially, and that is to say road repair and road maintenance. And with Wrightson Road, we have that issue. And we also have problems which arise as a result of flooding and so on. First, I want to ask you this. Do you think the impact on Wrightson Road of these containers is a problem? And if so, how does Ministry of Works address that?
Thank you, Chair. So that is the problem with the port traffic. It is an issue. It is something that we have highlighted as being an issue within the ministry. It requires a holistic look at the entire network, not just looking at the port alone, we have to look at the number of vehicles that actually use Ryson Road as well. One of the long-term plans would be to try and remove the vehicular traffic along that road, shifting their hours, shifting how the people commute, which would be by means of more mass transit and so forth. There is an issue with real estate as well within Port of Spain. So really what is required is a master plan of the entire environment, of how that would actually work and tie into our infrastructure. There's no short-term or short win at trying to solve the traffic problem along Ryson Road. We have considered many different options. One of the last options we were actually considering was widening Ryson Road to create more capacity. But even with widening, the more you actually widen the lanes and create more capacity, you're going to have more vehicles utilizing these roads. So it's almost like a circular effect. So it really requires sitting down and having all the various stakeholders contribute to this master plan with regard to how the entire traffic system in Port of Spain should work.
Sure. I don't think you answered my question. Basically, what I'm asking you is you said Ministry of Works is responsible for Ryson Road in terms of its maintenance and so on, right? So if it's not well maintained, and if it's being damaged because of heavy vehicular traffic on it, including the containers which are loaded up and so on, does Ministry of Works prioritize Ryson Road to make sure it's in good repair? Does it prioritize Ryson Road to ensure that if we have excess rain, that we sort of mitigate the impact of the rainfall and we don't have floods which slow traffic down? Essentially, that's what I'm asking.
Well, yes, Ryson Road is a priority area. Most of the high traffic areas are considered high priority. So because of the significance of the port and the contribution that it makes to the wider economy, it is considered a high priority. And efforts are placed every year with respect to ensuring the drains are clean, the road is maintained, etc. So yes, it is.
Thank you. Member Cummings, you had a question?
Yes, Thank you, Chairman. So a couple of questions. The first two, just taking off where you started, Chairman, in terms of Ryson Road, is there any active plan in place for improvements, including the extra lane that you spoke about, or roundabouts, removal of traffic lights, etc.? Is there any active plan in place or under consideration this time?
We have plans that are being looked at. So the short answer is yes, but we have to look at it holistically with all of the new developments that are planned for the area.
Okay, because I will tell you that the extra lane on the highway heading south just before Chaguanas has assisted in reducing the traffic congestion getting to south on an afternoon, even during peak hours. While I understand the circular effect that you speak about, that extra lane has assisted in that problem. While I'm out of Port of Spain for a while, in terms of Chaguanas, which also has a traffic problem, and one of the very large housing developments, that is the Edinburgh 500 area and that Brentwood area and so forth, all of the traffic, so then extra lane has been made to come off the Solomon Houshaw Highway to get into that area. But all of the traffic coming out still needs to go into Chaguanas to get north. Is there any consideration for a situation to alleviate that? Maybe another ramp or ramp just where that Brentwood development is, that would allow persons going in and out of that area to not have to go through the Chaguanas traffic and make it, even worse than it is now. So is there any consideration for that?
Yes, the Chaguanas area is of particular It's a very unique area because of the way their development has taken place within that area. For the Edinburgh 500 area, proposed was a overpass that actually comes from 500 into Factory Road, vicinity of Factory Road, right? That is one area. We also have plans that are actively being considered for the Chase Village area and also for the Endeavour area. So we believe that the Endeavour area is the first project that we're seeking to do, and that should assist with the traffic within Chaguanas and 500, because the overpass would be a long-term project which will require a certain level of effort that I'm not sure we could put into place at this point in time because of the real estate, etc. A lot of stuff, a lot of things are required to get that overpass constructed.
Well, since we are on the topic of Chaguanas, before we get to Member Alexander, I wonder if Commissioner Clark might be able to assist us with this, because we want to make it clear to those listening and viewing that this is about a national problem. This inquiry is about a national problem. So since we are on the area of Chaguanas, we also have the problem when you are trying to come off the highway. If you are heading in a southerly direction and you are trying to come off the highway into Chaguanas, you immediately meet a number of bottlenecks. The first one is caused by the fact that there is a very short street just past the Chaguanas flyover, which allows traffic to join the flow coming off the highway, which tends to be heavy. So you have an immediate bottleneck right there. And then to get onto the southern main road, you have to go to some traffic lights. And there is another bottleneck there because there is a taxi stand on the other side of the southern main road. And of course, you have traffic, heavy traffic on the southern main road itself. What I am asking is, Mr. Commissioner, would this fall under your remit, or would this be a matter for the police to address in terms of traffic signage? Let's say make that short street a no entry and that kind of thing, change the place of the taxi stand. Would that fall under your remit?
Chair, I was about not seeking my PS protection, but just to say, though, more or less that's a matter more for traffic management branch. However, I want to say, though, that we do observe some of these challenges, and we will have discussions with the traffic management branch, but they are the ones who will look at the statistics relevant to those areas, look at the issues, and make recommendation. I want to believe Mr. Pigott may be best suited to answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Stas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chair. Excellent question. It's a challenge that we have throughout the entire country. It's not just Chaguanas, but Chaguanas has grown at a pace that the infrastructure did not grow for it. As I will say again, the roads don't really cause traffic. The land uses is what produces the traffic or generates the traffic. Because there was no integration between land use development and road infrastructure development, that is the reason why you will have such ad hoc types of intersections taking place, because the road network just couldn't suffice with the massive commercial developments that are taking place in the Chaguanas area. That is a serious area of concern, Chaguanas. If you are familiar with the area, the roadways are very narrow. Most of the land uses have turned into heavy commercial activity, retail, and some light industrial, where you have a significant mix of private motor cars, extra heavy vehicles within those type of roadways, and it's a buzzing place where you have heavy commutership taking place. For example, a lot of public transportation movements from various areas in the central area because it's a generally a hub. So you have that entire mix taking place in an area where the road infrastructure did not increase with the pace of the development. So you spoke about the taxi stands. That is a battle that is a daily battle I think the ministry is faced with, for example, where you really locate them. No real planning was done with the pace of the development for hubs, transportation hubs. So most of the roadsides are used, and when you use the roadsides for taxi stands, you reduce the capacity of the road network system. And many a times when you attend to regional corporation meetings, the first thing you hear from different councils is to move the taxi stands out, move them to places outside of the city center, not knowing that you are disadvantaging the vulnerable population. So we have to create that. We're battling with all the different issues, but when we make these decisions, we have to think about the vulnerable population first. I am not into the business of putting taxi stands outside of city centers. This is one of the few places in the world where we try to move public transportation service away instead of encouraging it, because our focus is always on private motor vehicle. And that is one of the main reasons why we are here today, speaking about traffic issues, because the focus is only on moving private motor vehicles where there's 1.2 person per vehicle on the road network system. So it's
Mr. Piggott, I get you. I don't want to interrupt you, but before I forget the point, basically what I want to say is that the taxi service doesn't only help vulnerable people, but you have vulnerable people in the vehicles stuck in traffic. So there are vulnerable people all around that we have to consider, and I'm asking whether there is a possibility of compromise. The regional corporations might be saying put them outside of the town hub or the city hub, as the case may be. As it is in Chaguanas, we have one at a choke point. Surely there must be some way that the relevant parties can compromise and say, okay, let's just move it a few streets, it would be south. Are those things not considered? Or do you find in your experience that parties are taking a hardened position on these issues? What is your experience on this?
Those things are always taken into consideration. When I use the word vulnerable, is people who are on their feet in this engineering world, in the transportation engineering. Vulnerable population is not people in their private cars. They are in comfort. They are not exposed to the environmental issues.
Well, Mr. Piggott, no, I don't know that might be correct. I mean, the terminology for me as a citizen certainly doesn't make sense. If I have somebody coming from dialysis at a hospital in Port of Spain or in St. James, or coming from cancer treatment and is in a car trying to get home to Caparo or wherever they may be headed, to me, that person should be considered vulnerable. Don't you agree?
From your angle, it's you're correct with your angle from what you just raised there. But I'm speaking about the public transportation, the people who are using public transportation service. They are walking on the road network systems. We don't want to put them further away outside of the hubs, because they're putting them in a more disadvantaged situation. So it's always taken into consideration. We do try to find most feasible areas, but as I stated earlier, Chaguanas is a very difficult place to find space, for ample space on the road network system and even off the the road network system, because if we have to find off the road network system, it will require land acquisition by the state to find a suitable area to create hubs and stuff like that.
And to be fair to you, Mr. Piggott, I remember when you first came before this committee, you made the point about the growth, the urban growth having an impact on the transportation system. So I'm quite happy and grateful to you for having made that point and reminding us that that's a significant issue to take into account. Member Alexander, you have a question.
Mr. Piggott, nice to have you back. Through you, Chair. So I'm taking that spatial planning is having a significant impact on traffic, and I get that from both Mr. Cooper and Mr. Piggott, yes? Town and country, they should be in this, they should be before this committee too. Town and country. But we understand that, right? But in the short term, the immediate term, we want to solve the traffic that exists now with whatever band-aids we could put on it now. We're not saying these are the solutions. We're not saying this is the long-term solution. We're just saying that if you could add, as Member Cummings said, if you could add an extra lane here and you could add an extra lane there, just to give them some relief, because as the chair said, everybody is vulnerable when they're in their car in traffic. I wanted to ask some questions. Between the two of you, Mr. Piggott and Mr. Cooper, who is responsible for saying that, let's say we make a rule or a law in Trinidad, that between 3 and 6, no heavy trucks on the road. No containers, no dump trucks, no anything beyond a 5-ton truck. Which one of you all has that authority?
Like how Mr. Piggott sent that
True,
to me, right? Yes. And Mr. Piggott threw that to me because the Transport Board falls under the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation. So that would be under the remit of our minister. We have a kind of hybrid situation going on right now because we are still operating with the former committee that was in place, and that happens to be headed by Mr. Cooper at this time, even though he's in Works and Infrastructure. So that falls squarely under the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation. But I think your follow-up questions, Mr. Cooper, may be able to help you with.
I really want to ask this question, that now that there are more than just one group doing it, if we could all get together and say, and it will help solve Ms. Batti's problem so she don't have to worry about her gates, if we just ban the trucks. If we say between 3 and 6, on all main roads, no heavy trucks, wouldn't that have a significant impact on traffic?
It would have an impact, yes. There are existing restrictions on special vehicles at the moment, and they are placed in particular for town centers. Heavily trafficked areas, we limit the times that trucks and so forth could come on the roadways. So there is largely an enforcement problem. That is the main issue, I would say, with respect to that. And it will reduce some of the traffic.
I have never seen Mr. Piggott as enthusiastic as he was when I asked the question. He was enthusiastic in his positivity. So I think that he agrees that that could be a solution, yes?
Yes, excellent suggestion, member. 2012, a freight study was done, and it is suggested what was suggested by you. It's twofold. Obviously, a technical analysis needs to be done, which will be both Ministry, Works and Transport, well, Works and Infrastructure, and Transport and Civil Aviation. Additionally, you will require policy support for that. A consultation was done, extensive consultation was done, as Ms. Batiste was highlighting earlier. It is an ecosystem. There are major shifts with the way we do business in Trinidad and Tobago will be required. For example, the number one issue that came up, because this freight transportation affects the business community, and the businessmen will have to have additional resources after hours to load their shelves And then the first thing that came up by all parties was crime, because it's after hours in the night, it will affect the way they do business. But it is something that needs to be done, and we are at the stage, not now, a long time ago, where that needs to be put in place in this country. So it's an excellent suggestion.
Okay, we will come back to you with Member Alexander. But Member Birchwood has been trying to catch my eye, and Member Dowlat as well, so we'll go with Member Birchwood.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so I want to acknowledge the contribution by Member Ms. Batiste, and also Mr. Piggott. I can recall from the last sitting that I was at, I made mention to investing in a more robust public transportation system, right? Carpooling is something that has evaded this nation, and I think it's something that we need to revisit. But my comment here / question might be a bit left field, and it's based on something that Mr. Clive Clark would have made mention to in his opening remarks with respect to the training of drivers and how the actual ability of a person being to drive efficiently or effectively contributing to the congestion in Trinidad and Tobago. So just assessing how one goes about being eligible to drive on the road, do you think that it is time that we probably do away with the archaic way in which we assess drivers in Trinidad and Tobago, just taking into account the written exam that they do, right? Do you think it's time to introduce some form of mandatory defensive driving system or something that moves us away from knowing that we have incompetent drivers on the road? And maybe the other part of that, the physical aspect of the driving, to address the elephant in the room, we know that there are people that can pay and receive their driver's license. What systems do we have in place, can we put in place to ensure that the quality of drivers that we put in on the road, they do not contribute to the congestion?
Chair, if I may ask Mr. Clark to respond, please.
Yes, I was just going to invite Commissioner, because I think the question was directed at you.
That's right, Chair. Thank you very much, Member. Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me this opportunity. Specifically to the concern raised about drivers, whether the current system we use is adequate, and whether we are comfortable that what we are doing now is putting our drivers on the nation's road that give us that level of satisfaction that we are safe. And more so, I just want to add a twist to it. What do we intend to do to strengthen that? I must say at the licensing division, we have implemented significant systems to allow us to monitor the current situation or the current method of issuing driver's license. I want to use that term. We have also implemented modern systems and changing the curriculum for in terms of issuing driver's license. Let me just start with that point. I have recognized as Transport Commissioner the last couple of years ago that when I examined what was taking place in licensing relevant to the regulations test, that's the written part of the exam, I recognized the same exam I wrote, I don't want to say umpteen, a number of years ago. It was the same exam the current student sitting was writing, using the same pencil, pen, etc., same method. We have since changed that so that we can, and by that I mean we have changed the content to bring in some defensive driving and so forth into the exam. We have changed the method to allow some transparency, making sure they write with pen, making sure we have cameras in the room to make sure you are present. So it's almost impossible now to get a license coming out from licensing and say that someone get that permit from the licensing division. The system doesn't allow for that. All processes are integrated to ensure you come at licensing. You come at the licensing division. We continue, however, to face challenge with the subjectivity officers having access to your exam. In other words, I have to correct that exam. So therefore, we are not certain 100%. We don't have the tools to check whether that exam, and I'm saying this as the Transport Commissioner because I'm a bit concerned with it. My job is to fix it. Is truly marked, right? So the minister has encouraged, and we has encouraged us, and likewise, we are looking to bring systems whereby persons can use a digital way of writing that regulation exam and getting that result at the same point in time. We look at the fact that the dexterity test, persons have complained about whether the officer is exercising proper discretion. We have put cameras to monitor 95%, and I say with the exception for one which I can't say on media, in terms of the exam itself, whereby we could go and replay what has taken place. So we do have concern in changing that, and more so I'm looking forward towards the aspect of where we can even track the driving test on the nation's road, because we have had situations where persons go just a couple meters and get their driving permit. That's a possibility based on the current system. But more importantly, we are working on is putting in place regulating the driving schools. We are looking at that in terms of being a component of the ultimate. And from the policy side, I know the minister will be talking about that soon.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Member Dowlat has a question.
Thank you very much, Chair, through you. The last time we had this discussion, I asked about the recognition that 9 months out of 12, school is in operation. Extra 250,000 students on the road with vehicular traffic and things like that. So a cookie cutter kind of approach to traffic in different areas. You tend to have the traffic come into the more urban areas where the schools are concentrated. Now, we're looking in this inquiry about our traffic plan. We're looking nationally, but also specifically in certain areas. Is there a coordinating body that takes into consideration from the traffic wardens, TTPS, Ministry of Works, because sometimes, as you indicated, you have to have an extra labor, you have to change roads to one way at a particular time. Is there a coordinating body that works in terms of collecting the data? And remember too, there's the wet and the dry season. So one of our members or the chair would have spoken about during flood times and things like that. What are the evacuation plans for certain urban areas, especially where you have a high concentration of school population, workers, and things like that? Is there a coordinating body that deals with it? Or committee?
Thank you, Member, through the Chair. I just want to ask for some clarity. Are we talking about on a continuous basis, a coordinating body, or are we talking in terms of, because you said the word evacuation as well?
Yes, I added that at the end because I looked back at my notes the last time because I was told that Port of Spain and San Fernando don't have an evacuation plan. So I just added that in. But remember, traffic is continuous throughout the year. So it means, therefore, you can't have a piecemeal approach to it. So there must be some kind of coordination. Otherwise, we tend to put the blame on somebody else having the responsibility for certain things. So there should be, I am expecting, some kind of coordination because this is a national problem.
Yes, PS?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member. I would say that there are pockets of collaboration. There is not a coordinating body standing at the top that looks at all the various aspects that lead into congestion or the management of traffic. And I believe that on the last occasion as well, that question would have been posed, and I would have indicated that I believe that the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation should take that role. Of course, it means that we have discussions that we have to have with all our stakeholders. That has begun again very slowly in pockets as we deal with certain initiatives that are being forged by the ministry now, some coming out of the recent amendments of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, some coming out of an initiative that was recently approved by Cabinet concerning access to road traffic accident data. So there are pockets of collaboration with the TTPS and traffic wardens with the TTPS and traffic management, but there is need for more coordinated effort. And I think the Ministry of Transport should lead that. On the issue of evacuation plans, Chair, if you would allow Mr. Piggott just to give some idea of something that is in its embryonic stage, but I think would be of interest to the committee.
Certainly, Mr. Piggott.
Thank you again, Chair. Traffic management had embarked upon developing an evacuation plan for Port of Spain. We are aware of what takes place anytime there's a situation, a disaster, or any different type of incident on the road network system. And we realized, we kept hearing from various bodies that there is something, there is something, there is something. But anytime there is a situation on the road network system, in our estimation from the cameras, there's nothing coordinated. So we took it upon ourselves to develop something. We've developed something in-house, engaged all of the engineers in the Ministry of Works and Transport at that time, and got all of the inclusions from their ideas, took it to other stakeholders, because we developed in the document, presented to Port of Spain City Corporation, disaster management, fire, and a lot of stakeholders, and we are at the point right now, so we do have a document, we do have a very expansive presentation, and we are at the point right now just to meet with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, because the intention is to make them the goal commander to initiate when do we trigger this evacuation plan. I must go a little bit further, please allow me, whereby it is a good framework at this time, in my best estimation. However, when that is delivered, a lot of work still needs to be done, because we have to take other stakeholders into consideration. And I mean, Minister of Education, that's a big, in Port of Spain, a big stakeholder that so individual schools now within the Port of Spain area also have to have plans to feed into that plan, because it's it took a lot of things into consideration. For example, flooding, hazards like bomb threats, gas explosions. If Citygate is the area where there's a risk, for example, sometimes you may not be able to evacuate, you may just have to stay put. All different scenarios will take into consideration, but other work has to be done when we hand over the first draft to get full buy-in from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So it's at that stage right now.
Excellent. So I'm very happy from the last meeting that we've started that. Can I ask for one for San Fernando also?
Not a problem. I know time is waits on no one, but if we get over this hurdle successfully, I think we could engage with TTP. We're at the stage where we could engage with TTPS, because last meeting we had with them, Carnival was taking place, and after Carnival, we'll be able to engage with them to actually sort out this, and once we do that, we'll go to another heavily urbanized areas like San Fernando. Yes, not a problem.
Could we just come back to Ms. Duke, because I remember, P.S., the last time you appeared before this committee, you were quite firm in your view that responsibility for an oversight group or committee, or however we want to name it, should fall under the auspices of the Ministry of Transport. Let us say this committee thinks that's a good idea. Is the Ministry of Transport in a position to put such a group together to ensure that it does what it is intended to do? And if so, how much time would you need for that to happen?
Right, thank you for the question, Chair. So I think the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation is in a position to put such a group together. As I mentioned before, we have been engaging different stakeholders on different activities. So many of the main stakeholders, the TTPS, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of the Attorney General, which at times has to prepare documents to give effect to decisions made by Cabinet, most notably the last few under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, amendments to those. So we have been engaging stakeholders separately. So I think we already have sort of tacit buy-in. So I think we are in a position to do that, and it remains for us to probably at the level of the executive make that push. I think the minister is already sold on this idea, and to really get the approval to advance that. One of the areas that we would need to look critically at is our staffing, though, in order to make sure that there's sustainability. As a new ministry, there are a lot of technical resources that we would need, and we have begun the process to look at what gaps there are in our structure since the realignment, and to attempt to get the approval to put those things in place. So I know you asked me what is the time frame, Chairman, but I think that having the staff in place to really build in the sustainability will be one of the little bugbears. So I may not be able to really say a time frame because of that.
Well, P.S., I think you have addressed it extremely politely, and we have your written report, so we appreciate that this is not simply a real challenge, it's almost an existential challenge, because when I look at pages 2 to 4 of your report, there are certain districts identified. We have the St. George West District, we have the Caroni District, and we have the Victoria West District. Now, I don't know if this was just a sample of where you have personnel, or do you have personnel in all the districts?
Okay, so this in particular is the traffic management branch, and Mr. Piggott will be able to give us some idea of how the staffing goes in those districts. But when I spoke a while ago, Chairman, I was not just speaking about the traffic management branch. I was speaking about the ministry as a whole, because we also need to have technical resources in research and planning and so on. And right now we are lacking in that area. Let me just take this opportunity to really say thank you and to appreciate the Ministry of Works and Transport, which continues to support us in that area. But that is an area in which we would need to enhance our capability. Should I go to Mr. Piggott concerning the districts?
Perhaps I should just clear it up. The reason I referred to the report is because I was thinking, if you don't have people for these jobs which exist and you can't fill these positions, if we are creating this oversight group, which will inevitably need support staff and so on, is it just a plan, or is it likely to bear fruit? Is the ministry in a place where, if this committee makes a recommendation that, we can see that the group will be formed, it will have the representative stakeholders, it will have something like a secretariat within the ministry. Does the ministry have the capacity for that, is really what I'm asking.
Right. And so, Chairman, that goes to my answer before, that we need to increase capacity. Let me just mention that in terms of the districts you see here, which would be the on-the-ground people, so I understand why you are asking that, there is a proposal as we speak to increase this. And when I say a proposal, it has gone beyond the ministry, so the ministry has laid that where it needs to be laid, and we are just waiting on a response. So that is traffic management. In terms of the secretariat and the research and the planning is where we now have to advance what we would like to have. Because that would be at the policy area, the secretariat area, and then the districts here are operational. And as I said, we have already advanced our proposal to increase this complement at the level of the districts.
Okay, thank you, PS. I know it will be a break in the questions, but we have one from a member of the public, and I don't know who might be able to answer this. What is the procedure for communities to get additional entrances or exits for their communities? Oropoon Gardens has one entrance and one exit for hundreds of residents. And there have been several instances where residents have been trapped in the community for hours during emergencies without any alternative entrance or exit. Is there anyone here who might be able to assist this member of the public with this question? Or I am looking at the at Commissioner Clark, but I'm not sure, again, as to whether it falls within his remit or whether we should take a note of this and pose it to the TTPS. But who decides how many entrances and exits you would have for a residential area? Town and Country. Well, I should say to the viewing and listening public that we did send questions to Town and Country, and we received their responses 2 days ago. So their responses have not yet been circulated to members, but I think in different ways, the people who have come before the committee have emphasized the importance of Town and Country. So it may be that we will have to have questions for them at another time. Yes, Member Cummings?
Chair, I'm not too sure that a matter like that falls to the Town and Country to initiate. Some agency will have to make such an application. Town and Country does not on its own go about initiating things like that. That will have to be Highways Division or something like that. Entrances to the highway and exit and entrance to the highway, that can't be a Town and Country matter. I stand to be corrected, but I certainly do not think so. Wouldn't that be a Ministry of Works or something? It can't be.
So let me clear it up. Excellent question, member from the public. I know what challenge they're going through. It's a land development. It's under HDC. When land developments are taking place, Town and Country stipulates where the accesses and stuff will be from the beginning. If it's an approved development, it's already approved. Normally, when an application is made to Town and Country Planning, they will itemize which agencies you need to go for non-objection for that development. When that is completed, that's the approval that goes forward. If there's a complaint from a community, they can go to depending on the road network that they are accessing, they could go to the local authority, which is the regional corporation, or if they are bordering a major road network system like a highway, they will have to approach Highways Division and Traffic Management for both local and for the highway purposes.
I think this raises a point which we have not really dealt with before in this inquiry, and I think it must be important for us to remember it, and that is to say, communication with citizens is important. So the citizens of Orapun, for example, must be able to know or have some way of doing a search online, for example. In case they wish to make such an application, they will know where they have to apply, to whom they have to apply, is there a process they have to follow. And that would be from the Ministry of Planning, because Town and Country would fall under the Ministry of Planning. Can anybody here assist with that? Either member or stakeholder?
Well, Chair, a matter like that, I would think that the residents will have to raise their concern. Highways Division is still on the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. Will have to raise their concern with that ministry, because that ministry has control over what access you can have to the highway. That Orapun development comes just off the highway, not so? Right? So I think the residents will have to make their application to that ministry, the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, who will, through their normal processes, take a matter like that forward or not. And whatever applications will have to make to Town and Country, but the residents can be required to make an application to Town and Country. I don't see how that can work.
Okay, thank you, member. Just one quick question. I think I have the question for Ms. Caprietta. Ms. Caprietta, if I recall clearly, the last time Ministry of Works attended before this committee, you had indicated that there was a national traffic management plan that was being worked on. Could you correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me whether that was what you had said to the committee?
Yes, Madam Chair. I had said was that there was an that the last national transportation plan was done in, Adande, could you remind me again? 1967. And that the most recent document we have in terms of national transportation is actually a policy document, it's not a plan. And that was conducted under and spearheaded by the Traffic Management Branch. Did that clarify the information that I gave?
Yes, well, kind of leads me to the next one, which is to say, when are we getting the next plan, and under which ministry would be doing it?
Well, any national transportation policy would be a combination of infrastructure as well as systems to manage congestion. So the policy would sort of guide us into the direction of if the solution is actually more road or more mass transit or a combination of holding areas and those sort of devices.
And which brings me back to Ms. Duke, which is to say, if it is that this group has to be formed, would it be more appropriate for this group, which hopefully, let us hypothetically say, will include all relevant stakeholders together with the technical assistance that you need, will this group be better placed to formulate or to draft such a plan for consideration by Cabinet, or would it fall under the remit of the Ministry of Works?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It would be better placed under Transport and Civil Aviation. And if you would allow me, I would ask Mr. Piggott to speak on why.
Mr. Piggott, you're being called up to bat pretty often here.
Thank you very much. Well, national transportation is under Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation, 1. 2, national transportation planning is not, Ministry of Works and Infrastructure focuses on the road network system only. Transportation is road, movement of people as well, which is respect to public transportation service, and integrated transportation system, which is the air, land, and sea as well. The National Transportation Policy took air, land, and sea into consideration, and that's under the remit of the Ministry of Works and Transport, but maritime is in Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation, but maritime services is in Ministry of Works and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Member Alexander. You had a question?
Yes.
Your microphone on?
Answering my question about extra heavy vehicles being off the road at peak times. He suggested the issue about crime and that pushing it to after hours, crime was raised as an issue. But I want to ask, if we're only moving between 150 and 300 container trucks, that is the one that impacts businesses that have to be open to have resources. Why can't it be done earlier? Why does it have to go to after hours? And I'm asking that for everybody, because if we had, as a possible short-term traffic solution, that extra heavy trucks be off the road during these hours, then all of us who bring anything to bear on the system could work together to make sure that between 7 and 3, we are a lot more functional. Yes?
Yes. I don't want to look at it.
I want your support on this suggestion.
No, you have my support. No, 100%. I just don't want us to limit to what's taking place with Port of Trinidad and Tobago into Ireland. Well, the Port Authority, there's also what impacts Ryson Road. The port in Chaguanas heavily impacts Ryson Road. A lot of heavy trucks. So what they 155 they're speaking of is what's taking place, Port Authority, right in the vicinity of Ryson Road. But also note that the Port of Chaguanas moves a lot of heavy vehicles as well that has to pass through Ryson Road. So it's not just there. Also, the network, so I support your point, wait. The point of Point Lisas as well moves a lot of containers. And it's the network, it's a transportation network. It's not just Ryson Road. It's impacted the entire...
No, I get that, and that's what I'm saying.
So that's why...
My suggestion is, nationally, on all main roads and highways, no extra heavy trucks, no heavy trucks beyond, say, 5 tons between that peak time would and should have a significant impact on the traffic.
It will.
In the short term.
It will have a significant impact on the road network system. Heavy vehicles, anytime you collect traffic data, you have to take into consideration the percentage of heavy vehicles on the road network system because of the speed that they operate, because we have a road network system, because you also have to look at traveling speeds. What we have on the road network system is too many different varying speeds taking place. So you have quarrying operations as well. Quarrying operations, heavy trucks go to quarries 4, 5 in the morning, queuing up. By the time they take up the load, they are on the road network system between the hours of 6 to 9, going to different hardware. So the point is a very serious and valid point, but it requires policy backing. It's not just only on the technical level, but it's something that will be supported by technical people in this field, whereby we need to control the operations. And it happens in other more developed societies. It happens having these vehicles operating the hours 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. as opposed to, and if, obviously they will have to have exemptions for certain circumstances, people will have to transport out within the hours that we don't want them on, and we need to have an approval process with that, probably through the transport board, etc. So it's something that definitely is needed.
I just wanted to ask one more question, because twice to this committee, I have heard a statement, like if we build an extra lane, more vehicles will come and fill up those lanes. Where are those vehicles now? And I'm not trying to rubbish the point, because I know that we will constantly be growing, and that's why I say that town and country and spatial planning needs to be an integral part of this for the long term.
Yes.
But in the short term, these short-term solutions that will make life easier for the traveling public That's what we're supposed to be looking at.
It's a dynamic system. You have a certain number of, just paint this picture for you. Let's just use the east-west corridor, Sandy Grande to Port of Spain. You have a certain number of vehicles that utilize that roadway every single day. It's a cat and mouse game citizens play. The main thoroughfares, especially between Arima and Port of Spain, are sufficiently served, I will say, because of the priority bus route. A lot of people who own cars still use public transportation services. From the minute, just giving you a little example, in your workplace, someone will say, today, but normally it used to take 54 minutes from Arima to get to Port of Spain. And of late, they're taking 38 minutes, 42 minutes. And the conversation spread that the highway is moving a little bit more efficiently. When people who used to do park and ride on some days, they say, well, they would try and use their motor vehicles from Arima to Port of Spain. And then you start seeing the numbers going up. The travel time moves again, goes from 54 minutes to an hour. Then they realize they cannot deal with that anymore. Some people leave their cars home, and these are people who have the option of taking public transportation, because we have to understand, as people, we all prefer to be in our private cars. And people who can't even afford a private car will like to have a private car because of the conveniences that it brings. Unless the public transportation system is comfortable, attractive, and reliable, we could more keep people into that system for work-based home trips. What we have, because people who totally depend on public transportation that have cars, they are only doing work, home-based trips. They are leaving home, go to work, go back home. Anytime trips are outside of home-work-based trips, you will find people more encouraged to get into a private car because the public transportation system is so weak. The main thoroughfares are sufficiently served. It could be much more improved through the maxi taxi system and the PTSC, etc. So you get from Arima to Port of Spain, San Fernando to Port of Spain, Chaguanas to Port of Spain. Those main thoroughfares, people can have some level of confidence. But if you have to study after work, you will not be inclined to take public transportation service. You will want to use a motor vehicle. So it's a very dynamic system. So when you start to widen the road network system, add additional lanes, because you have, when you put a lane on a highway, 1,300 vehicles per lane per hour. You have 2 lanes, 3 lanes. When you widen, you have the ability, people will now say, I don't need public transportation service. I don't need to use the public transportation service because you provide the capacity, and more of those vehicles that people who do 3 days a week, some people drive 3 days a week as opposed to 5. Some people do 5 days a week. Some people, there's a whole mix.
Yes.
So when you build the capacity.
So, Mr. Piggott, we don't want to get too granular because we also have your written response as well. But Commissioner, I completely forgot, but a member of the public had brought this to my attention and had been following when you had first attended. And perhaps you could clarify. He was telling me that, vehicles now, sometimes you would have parents with children in the car and they would have the baby on board sign. Or sometimes people would put up a sign with their horoscope and that kind of thing on the windshield, where he was more concerned with the baby on board sign. Is it that is now illegal?
Thank you very much, Chair. That's a question we do get time to time, and I guess we are looking at this relevant to the tint legislation, because persons really ask, can I put a marking on my vehicle, or more so on the window? When we look at it very carefully, the law doesn't prohibit someone from doing so. What it points out is really that marking, we have to be able to explore whether it impacts the visibility and safety, and it's here where we exercise a level of discretion in terms of that. So I wouldn't say it is illegal right? Because again, the way the legislation is written, such markings, we must be able to exercise our discretion as to whether it will impact the visibility. For example, you have persons who will want to put some entire scripture in the back of their window or some other markings, and those are the ones we have some challenge with.
I'm really glad you cleared that up, because essentially what members of the public should understand is that yes, you could have signs like baby on board on your car once it doesn't obstruct your ability to see through your rear view window, for example, or your side mirrors or anything like that. So thank you for clearing that up. I want to make sure, because we have had both Ministry of Works and Ministry of Transport before us already. So I don't want us to go into what we have already discussed and what we have in writing from you. But we haven't heard from Mr. Sanka. Mr. Sanka, would you like to give us your views in terms of how, as Chief Traffic Warden, how your division might be improved to assist us with the existing traffic problems that we have? If you want to focus it on rush hour, then fine, you could do that. If you want to focus it on certain geographic areas, then that's another option. But would you share your views with us?
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that question. And first, I just want to recap, and I think I would have submitted this information to the committee before. Just want to highlight that the Traffic Warden Division was established to strengthen national traffic enforcement capacity, to support the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and improve the overall efficiency of the country's traffic management framework. But over the past decade, the division's mandate has expanded in response to the increased road usage, growth in vehicle population, and the rising demand for structured traffic control in urban centers and developing communities. So all these developments that are taking place now, we have that demand for traffic wardens to assist with controlling the traffic. We are responsible for enforcing traffic laws and directing the vehicular and pedestrian movement, fixed penalty notices, and we play a critical role in school zone management and at major events. Now, we have traffic throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, we do not have traffic wardens in Tobago at this time. But we have a demand for traffic wardens to assist with controlling traffic peak hours, morning times, and afternoon. We have that demand more so for schools, school zone areas, where we have a buildup of traffic on mornings and on afternoons, where parents come and they park illegally sometimes, and we are faced with that demand. Our traffic warden strength manpower this time doesn't cater for us to supply the demand for controlling traffic with traffic wardens for the entire period, morning and afternoon. So we have that challenge to deal with there. I am saying that we could do much better if we have an increase in manpower, and we had mentioned that on the last occasion that I was here. That would put us in a better position to satisfy the driving members of the public and to pull that traffic and to ease the traffic flow. That same district that you mentioned, in Chaguanas, we have that situation on mornings where you get off the highway to go into Chaguanas and you turn left, but then there is a traffic problem on Gaston and John Street to turn right and then to come up to the traffic light, and then on Busy Corner and to get back onto the Southern Main Road there. So we are experiencing traffic challenge with traffic wardens. We have them there on mornings. We have the traffic as they turn left off onto the highway. Those who are supposed to turn right will occupy the right lane with the assistance of the traffic warden, and the left lane is still occupied by drivers who want to turn right also. Back in the traffic to the highway, and they cannot get to go forward on that left lane. So these are some of the challenges that we experience. We have other areas, and once we have that additional manpower, I think that we could make that effort a better effort with what we are doing now. We have 6 schools in St. Joseph, I forget to mention that, in one area, and we have to go there on afternoons. 6 schools in one area in St. Joseph, and if the traffic wardens are not there, it is chaos. And then we have the Kireb Junction to deal with, so we can't deal with it at the same point in time. So it's throughout the country, but we need some more manpower.
Understood, and thank you for that. So that seems to be something that is fairly urgent to be addressed. So, Member Alexander, you have a question?
Mr. Sankar, the effective use of the existing manpower, though. I mean, I encounter some groups of traffic wardens on Western Main Road some mornings where there's just 4 traffic wardens stand up on the side of the road not doing anything to impact traffic. How do you get the best use of the existing manpower that you have?
Thank you for that question, Chair. So I think is a point that has always been raised, that we see traffic wardens standing on the side of the road not doing anything. We have constant lectures to them. We talk to them about the purpose of pulling the traffic. To get optimum use out of them there, we sometimes go down on spot, visit them, and give them that briefing before they go out there and let them know that their rules and what their functions are outside there. In addition to that, St. James area, we have, you may see only 4, but we have a situation in Chaguanas right now where we have people assigned for that area, roadworks taking place there at the Chaguanas police station. So on that day now, in that Chaguanas area, you would see them pulling the traffic, making sure that the traffic is properly controlled. Those that you might see sometimes in St. James there, sometimes the traffic might be light. I am not bracing for them, but sometimes it's a challenge that we have, and we're dealing with it.
Second, Member Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. It is in direct connection with that. I was going to ask something similar to that, because I do see that you have quite a number of officers on the St. James roadway on a morning in particular. But there are other areas, the Arpita Avenue, and in particular the Mucurapo Road, where there are about 3 secondary schools on the road itself, and then 1 feeding off the back of St. James coming back out there, that causes a lot of traffic on the Mucurapo Road. You seem to have probably some extra officers on the St. James Road that might be able to be redeployed to those areas.
Thank you very much for that information, and I will certainly look at that to ensure that we have optimum use, Mr. Alexander.
And I just want to make one more suggestion to you. There are GPS devices that you can furnish your traffic wardens with that will tell you where in the world they are at the moment, and I think that you might want to consider that. They've gotten quite cheap. Because, and I just wanted to point out again, opposite the entrance to the St. James Health Center, there's a place called Furniture Plus. And if there's a traffic warden there to stop Furniture Plus trucks and maxis stopping there while people trying to turn into there would be no traffic backing up to Maraval. So that is a place that I am aware of, and I wanted to suggest when you deploy that you know that they are there, because sometimes all it takes is just visibility for people to do the right thing.
Okay, so
Noted.
Unless there are any other questions from members, I just want to make an observation, because this is likely to be the last in-person hearing of this inquiry. And the observation is this, that unless we take a hold of this problem and address it, first, incrementally, by doing the small things that we need to do to help us along before the big picture plan comes into place, we as citizens are contributing to the problem. So, for example, on Saturday, on the east-west corridor on the highway, there was bumper-to-bumper traffic barely moving from about Nestle to Trincity. And there seemed to be no apparent reason for it. But what was also obvious is There was no regulation of it. Now, the reason for that traffic is something that I can't explain. I only observed it because I ended up being stuck in it for a considerable period of time. But the observation is this: please, as citizens, we don't always have to overtake on the left. We don't have to pretend that our cars are armored trucks and we are somehow getting a thrill out of cutting in and out of traffic. At the end of the day, one, it's dangerous. And the other thing is, it slows everybody down. So could we, and this is just my observation, try to use some common sense when we find ourselves in traffic, and also try to manage how we respond to it, because I know that people can become very angry, irritated. If you are tired after a hard day's work, you haven't had a chance to eat lunch, and you find yourself in such a situation, you begin to drive in a different way. So I think in the interim, one of the things that we can do as citizens while waiting for everybody else to do things for us is that we can try to manage the way we drive on the roads and highways and how we treat fellow drivers on the roads and highways. So that is just an observation that I want to make as we close this third session of our inquiry. I want to thank the stakeholders. And just as you would have, for those of you who were here before, I'm going to ask for a closing statement from Ms. Batiste, Mr. Cooper, and Ms. Duke. I suppose, Ms. Duke, I should ask you to go first.
Thank you, Chairman. And I also want to say thank you to the members today for your questions, and more so for your recommendations and observations. And also thank you to my colleagues from Ministry of Works and Infrastructure and the Port Authority. We have been given a lot more food for thought today. This is a really awesome responsibility that the ministry has to engage as lead in terms of the efficiency of traffic management. And of course, we are going to take the recommendations that will come, and we will lean on our stakeholders to assist us in playing the role that we need to play to the benefit of the citizenry. So again, I want to thank you, Chair, Committee, and all my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Batiste, I know you had a lot of time today to answer questions and to clear things up. So I will invite you to make a closing statement on behalf of the Port Authority.
Thank you, through the Chair. Madam Chair, members, we want to thank you all for this important topic, this important issues, because of course, even as citizens, we are also impacted by the traffic throughout the nation, and we recognize, and we at the Port Authority, we have been doing our part. We have been looking at it in terms of how we can streamline our operations by using appointment system. I want to also reiterate that based on the data, we are part of the problem, but we are not the source of the problem. And I think it's important to put that out there, because there are several logistics trade operation that's taking place on a daily basis that contributes significant traffic. And we must also consider, when we are coming up with solutions, we have to ensure that while some of the solutions may sound straightforward, it may not be beneficial. Because, for example, if we decide to pause operations at the Port Authority, my question to us is, where does those trucks go? Where are they delivering to? And we are saying that we have to look at the solutions to move the cargo to a different location as opposed to halting the system, because while it may sound feasible to say we can move the cargo from 7 to 3, our capacity can only handle so much. I'm talking about our resources. We have internal operations loading vessels while we are loading trucks. So we are doing this operation simultaneously, and our resources have to serve both the private trucks that are coming to drop off cargo. There are also implications to customers in terms of if you are not able to drop a container within a specific time, you have penalties to pay, you have damage, you have detention. So we are saying that while it is very important that we must think about the solutions and what we want to put forward is to find a balance. Let's look at solutions where we can employ the digitalization of it. Let's look at solutions where we can allocate some real estate to divert that cargo to as a staging area during these periods. Let's look at some solution where we can get some of these agencies working outside of the standard working hours, working in unison. And we, the Port of Port of Spain, Port Authority, TTIT, our ferry, we are committed to working with all the agencies to be able to come up with solutions that are realistic, practical, and impactful, taking into consideration the national development of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper, on behalf of the Ministry of Works, will you make a brief closing statement?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to take this opportunity to thank the chairman and the members for this very engaging discussion. I think we would have really touched on some of the key areas, the key points that we need to really place emphasis on. And just to highlight just a couple that are very dear to me and to the ministry would be that need for collaboration, that need for proper land use, zoning, and so forth. I think those areas, once we address those areas, we would really have a change within the entire congestion of our nation with regard to transportation and so forth. Another key area would be for us to look at changing the culture with respect to how people, the appetite to travel, to travel rather than use private vehicles. And I think those areas were really highlighted within this discussion today. And we look forward to, as a ministry, to embrace the recommendations that come out from this meeting and really make the, Trinidad and Tobago a better place in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. And thank you all for attending today and providing us with very valuable assistance in terms of the exercise in which we are engaged. This aspect of the meeting is now suspended, and the rest of us will have to stay behind for a short discussion. Let's go and